Welcome to Life Her Podcast, the podcast that guides you from the 9 to 5 grind to the freedom of your own path. Discover how to conquer life's challenges while pursuing your passions with unwavering faith. Because being an entrepreneur is not easy. So let's get to it.
Hey everyone, I'm Yvette Lloyd, host of Life Her Podcast. We have an amazing guest with us today, and she is seasoned business mentor and women entrepreneur and marketing strategy advisor and 4-time entrepreneur, over 12 years experience in the industry. Samantha's impressive career spans a client portfolio that includes some of the biggest names in tech like Apple, PayPal, LinkedIn, along with other over 100 startups. And she has helped 300 women own small businesses. And she is just doing an amazing job. I am excited about this interview. And you guys, welcome, Samantha.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here. And what an intro. Whoa.
Thank you. But you know what's so crazy about intros? We work so hard every day, and until somebody actually do a recap of the things that we do and we hear it out loud, we be like, wait a minute, is that me?
Holy shit, I've done a lot.
Yeah, that's you, Sam.
Oh,
That
thank
is
you.
definitely you. So tell me, who was Samantha before you have gotten all of this accreditation?
It's a good question. When I think about little Samantha, I think about me as like 9 years old, loving books, loving stories, feeling totally transported. I remember going to see 101 Dalmatians in the theater, and I remember feeling like I was in the movie with all the dogs around. And I just get lost in stories and I find the magic of them. But I'm also kind of a hustler. Like, I love business. I love it. I think it's so cool that anyone can start a company. Like, you have an idea that might mean something to someone else and you can do it. And I think over time I started to blend the two of those. And that's when when I went to school for marketing, because I found that that was kind of the sweet spot between the two. But marketing's such an ugly word. Like,
Oh
I
my God,
hate
it
the word
is.
marketing.
I do. It's
I
like
get
it
tired.
brings fear.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people get it wrong. I think a lot of people waste a lot of precious time and energy doing marketing the wrong way. And so, I started working with some of the biggest companies when I was 19. I was at an ad agency, and I was a total baby, like total fresh face. Like, I don't know why I was there, but somehow I was there, and I was working on a couple of big brands, and I got to see how these geniuses worked on huge brands and how, these massive companies, they employ a lot of people outside of those companies to help them
Mm.
form really powerful stories. And so that's when I just got hooked, and I was like, there's something here. And then, over those 12 years, worked with a lot of different companies in a lot of different capacities. And that's what I do. I help people who have something that has purpose and meaning to them get visibility and figure out what the hell their story is and how to message that and how to reach the right people, because that to me has meaning, and that has always carried meaning.
Wow. That is super dope because, many of us have brands, but at the same time, we're just doing it because we love to do it. It's passionate, but we don't know the end work on how to actually get paid and sponsored and just get recognized by companies and end up becoming their full blown commercial on our own platforms. Could you explain on how you can help many people to be able to navigate and get recognition from these major companies?
Yeah. When you say get recognition from these companies, what exactly do you mean?
Um, like you know how sometimes when like companies they need someone to represent their brand or even teaching you different marketing strategies on how to even get the attention that you need to leverage your company into another level.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you for clarifying.
You're
So there's
welcome.
two different things there, right? There's getting visibility on your brand, whatever you do, whether you have an agency, whether you're a creator, whether you have a product that potentially could partner with this larger brand. And then the second piece is getting in the right room with the right people. And so I'll tackle the first piece first. The visibility component, there's a lot here. I could talk all day about it, but it's first what I've seen over a lot of marketing with a lot of different teams and brands is first you need to check in with yourself and see, okay, what's the magic that you're bringing? Like, why do you care, Yvette Lloyd, about, the Life Her brand and ecosystem and starting there. And then when you figure out why and you figure out what makes you you and the person to, create this mini movement or big movement, then the pieces start to fall into place because then you start to really genuinely see where should you show up then and to who and with what sort of message. And the more genuine and authentic it is, which I know everyone talks about now, but truly, the more real it feels to you and to those people, then the message is delivered. And these big companies, they're looking for a couple of things. One, they're looking for some sort of traction. You know, do you have a track record of doing a good job at whatever it is you do? Two, are you professional when you do show up for the conversation in the right room? Are you there with a clear confidence and can you deliver the message accurately? Have you really thought about their brand? Have you been thoughtful and intentional in thinking about how can you help them with whatever problem? And that also means asking the right questions, almost like a job interview, right? It's like your questions to them are almost just as, if not more important than whatever it is that they have to say to you. And you are interviewing them as much as they are interviewing you. So also, bring them down on the pedestal a bit. Just because they work at a huge brand doesn't mean that they know everything and that they're the smartest person in the room. They're actually probably talking to you because you're smarter at something than they are, and they want to bring your brain into the business.
That is so true. If people really realize that, they'll figure out like how ahead they could get, and it comes with confidence of you knowing you, and that's what a lot of people lack in, and it's not even intentionally that they lack the confidence. It's just really somebody giving them reassurance and letting them know like you are really dope for real, like all of this stuff. So that also gives like lack on like when people are marketing their brand, they actually receive less of whatever services they're trying to provide, and be they charge you $50 when they really worth 400. So
Yes. Oh my
so it
God. Don't get me started on pricing.
yes, and it's fearful though when you have those prices. It's like, no, I really don't want to charge them that much, or you wouldn't even think someone will actually pay that much for what So it's like a gift and a curse.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's funny too, because, some of these big brands you might think have all the money in the world to throw around and they don't. They maybe their team or department actually has a smaller budget than you'd imagine. So I've been on the side, I've actually helped some companies hire out certain agencies or advisors and helped them look and find things in the market or find people in the market to bring into their business. And I've seen people pitch just ridiculous numbers because it's a corporate company. And it's like, I'm sorry, just because we're this team's a corporate company does not mean they're made of money.
Mhm.
And I've seen other teams charge way under and actually have incredible business acumen for whatever it is that they're pitching. But yeah, it's that confidence piece. And so if you can, again, be real with yourself and be like, no, I'm fucking good at marketing and I'm
Mhm.
going to ask them questions. And if they have an idea that I think is dumb, I'm going to tell them, that's probably not the wisest choice right now. What about this? And so it's all in the way that you handle the conversation. Again, once you do get in the room, which is another huge piece of it too.
Yes, it is. So I'm going to rewind it back a little bit, and I want you to share a bit about your journey in entrepreneurship and what initially drew you to the world of business, of mentoring and marketing strategy.
Yeah. I have always been entrepreneurial. So I went to business school at USF. I remember we had this capstone project where you got together with a couple of the other students in the class and you had to create a business. And I was lit. I was so excited. The entire semester or year-long thing, whatever it was, I loved it. I loved creating the business pitch and getting strategic and looking at the market. And we ended up crafting this. It was like it was like a wearable before there were wearables. It was for your wrist. But we were in college, so I was like, yeah, it tracks your drinking. And if you drink too much, it calls your friend or calls you a taxi.
Oh,
It's called Buzzband. And
okay.
at the time, our teacher was like, you should pitch this to Google because they could pick up at least the design and the technology. Because part of our pitch was that this could be used for other things. It could be used for diabetes. It could be used for all sorts of other things. And it was before Fitbit was around. So, anyways, we didn't end up doing that. And I kept going, I kept working in the marketing field, but I was kicked myself. I was like, damn it, that could have been really cool. I could have had an exit
Yeah.
before I was like 25. That'd be sick. So I started freelancing and doing marketing on the side, and that started a small consultancy. And then I was a senior director of marketing at an agency for crypto companies. So this edgy part of tech, not shitty, like scammy crypto companies, like legit ones.
Okay. Just to
Because I
clarify.
know, yeah, there's a big difference. Ones that actually work with the DFS and aren't like shilling stuff in ads. But let me back up for a second. Anyways, when I was a senior marketing director there, I had many different teams, like one team per client. I'd come in, I'd basically be like a fractional CMO, the team would implement. But the agency was like, we want to deliver more value. We want you to coach the founders. And that's when I realized that all these founders, they had coaches. All
Mm.
these CEOs, all these big execs, pick a VP at any major Fortune 500 company, they have a coach. And I was just like, what the fuck? No one knows about this? All
Man,
these all these leaders have coaches. Also, sorry, I'm cussing on this podcast. Is that okay?
you good, girl.
Okay,
I
thank you.
told you be yourself.
So that was wild to me, and I fell in love with coaching. And I think when I realized that, there's a reason why all these leaders have coaches, and I want coaching to be available to more people, especially more women entrepreneurs, because there needs to be more women entrepreneurs. There needs to be more small businesses backed by people who are smart and have a purpose and have a meaning. And then eventually I took the leap, and I had other businesses too. I had a content business, I had an energy healing business because I had like I had a moment where I really got into Reiki energy healing.
Oh.
Um, yeah, I found it like really calmed me down, and it was a great tool to like intuitively look at decisions and decision theory. So long story short, I eventually became a coach. I went off on my own. I did not want to do the agency hustle anymore. I was like, fuck that noise. I can work with great teams who maybe don't have the money to bring in a full-time CMO at, 300K a year, but they're open to a fractional CMO and getting that same level of strategy at 30K a year and still having their marketing teams. And so I was like, this is where it's at for me. Like, this is my
Yeah.
slice of the pie. And yeah, I have a podcast now and all the things, marketing myself. So does that answer your question or provide you a million
Girl.
other data
No,
points?
you're good, you're good. So, well, working with clients from Apple to women-owned small businesses, what have you been, like, doing as far as, like, your biggest lesson from managing such a diverse portfolio?
That's a good question. I see patterns. I see a lot of patterns with people, no matter where they're at. If they're at a huge company or they just started a company, a lot of people don't believe in themselves. So to some degree. Or they maybe believe in themselves as, this person, or they see this portion of their identity as strong. And then there's something that I usually see in the first couple sessions, and I'm like, ooh, you're avoiding this. This is a blind spot, and you're not comfortable here. Like you and I got on today, and you're like, I need to be more visible. It's like, yes, you do. You're hiding behind that microphone. And whatever square thing that is, it's like, let's get you on a stage. Put the microphone in your hand, So those things are normal though. And we all have them.
Yeah, we do. We do. I think it's more of, it's not only just being an introvert, it's just dealing with people. With me. Some people can be good people, some people can be evil, some people can be just a lot. Sometimes it's a lot to deal with many personalities and things. So I'm just really just got out of my own way when it comes to that. And I'm just like, I'm just gonna flow with it. Whatever happens, happens. I just know how to handle it now.
Yeah, and say no or like back off if
Yep.
it's not someone that you want around.
Yep. Yep. That's
See
the way it
ya.
is. You know it. So what are some high growth tactics that you believe are extensive for women entrepreneurs in today's market?
High growth tactics. Well, everything comes back to the person, right? So the tactics are going to vary by person because one person, they might love to speak and talk with people one-on-one. And so a podcast is a great it's a great tactic because it's long form content. And I guess one tactic is pairing a long form piece of content that you really enjoy, whether that's podcasting or writing or video. There's so many different mediums now that you could choose, and a short form one. So maybe that's showing up on threads and answering questions, or maybe that's posting something on LinkedIn, or doing the shortest email that takes you 5 minutes to create because you've figured out some sort of template that allows you to quickly write something that's short but goes out. And so I think that's the first thing. Choose your short form and a high form that's specific to you that you really enjoy, because if you don't like it, you're not going to stick with it. And that's the second thing. It's consistency. You have to show up. And I know it can be tiring as an entrepreneur. It's like, I didn't sign up to be a content creator. What is this?
Yes.
But that's where you
like, do you see, like, since you say you don't sign up as a content creator, I feel like at some point right now, it doesn't matter what you do, podcasting, maybe just own a business and just whatever you do. I feel like everyone is turning into content creators. I don't think it's singled out anymore or categorized or nothing. It's like, okay, let's just push that content. Come on, let's go. What do you think about that now? Because it is like becoming overrated and whelming.
Yeah, this afternoon, actually, I was scrolling. I was just like, this is a bunch of bullshit. Everyone has a personal brand and everyone's copying each other. I don't see anything unique. Or
Tell
it's
me
rare.
about it.
It's rare. It's rare. Sometimes I do, and it's very refreshing. So I think that's the key, is like, well, okay, forget the noise for a second. If no one was looking at this and you were just doing this for you and you got to create a little portfolio of things, what kind of portfolio of things would you want to play around with and enjoy? And then that becomes your way through it all. And just try to ignore all the noise because there's a lot.
It is. It is a lot. And even what you saying how everyone is doing the same content. Samantha, I fight every day to make sure my podcast is so different from other people's podcasts. And it's so hard because you could hire a publicist and they will give you a whole like list of things that you should do to make your brand better, to make you better. And it's like they're giving you stuff and then they'll show you an example of someone else's stuff, like maybe you should look into something like this and maybe you should do this. And it's like, I don't want to do what they do. It's like I want to create my
Yeah.
own lane. I want to create my own look. I don't want to look like other people's brands. So that's like another struggle too of like marketing and stuff. It's because people think this is how it's supposed to look. No, this is how it's supposed to look for me. Like that
Yes.
fits my personality, that fits who I am. I can't fit into something that isn't who I am. And I
Yep.
find that very difficult at the moment. Because I just make sure I stay in my own lane. So I just do my own graphics, my own videos. I just make sure I do everything on my own. But at the same time, I do want to do
Stretch.
more. And I
Experiment.
do
Yeah.
want someone to represent me, but I want someone to understand me too.
Yes, yes. And I think when looking for a publicist or any sort of partner in that regard, they have to see you and get you and not try and, put you in a box somewhere else. And I think what you said about, being you, showing up as you, your look, that is so important when it comes to
Mhm.
branding. It has to be you. And something I've advised companies, many different startups actually, you know, I see a lot of startups that enter some sort of scene and then they look and feel like every other brand. It's like that's no way to stand out. And that's definitely not genuine to this team and these leaders, this technology, whatever it is that they're selling. So it's figuring that out. And so my recommendation there, a high growth tactic in this department in branding, is to ignore all of your so-called competitors. Ignore all the other podcasts and what they look like and what they sound like. Ignore all the other people that are maybe in the personal branding space or content. Ignore. But look for inspiration from places that are totally outside of things. Look at art history. Look at you go on a trip and you go to a cool restaurant and you see that the way they do their table numbers are awesome and you're drawn to them. That's inspiration, right? And so if you can
Yeah.
draw inspiration from things totally outside of not just your lane, but your pool, your gym, wherever that is, that's where like the artistry comes in for a brand and really cool things can be made.
A lot of cool things. So, how do you approach marketing strategies for tech giants versus startups or small businesses? And are there any like core principles that apply to both?
Ooh, I've never been asked that before. Okay, so big businesses, they have more resources, right? They have more people, they have more information. They've probably been around longer than some of the earlier companies. And so all of that goes into how I work with them. Typically, they hire me because they either need an outside view because they're in a company, right? Sometimes when you're in the family, you can't see what's going on until you bring in a third party. Or they're trying to enter a new market, which is kind of an area where I specialize. In my marketing journey, I kind of went up in my trajectory through product marketing, which is all about go to markets and launches specifically. So if they're entering a new market, they bring me in, and my first job is just to learn and absorb and be a sponge and see, okay, how have things been performing? Why do they want to enter this market? What's the thing they're bringing to market? What's the timeline? What has worked for them historically? And then this new space, well, what's the truth here? And what's the truth with the big company? And what's in between? How do they meet each other? So, one big company I recently worked with, we used a lot of tactics that were native to the new industry, but were still authentic to them. So, not all, they weren't copying what this new industry was doing. They didn't want to be a big kid in a little kid's room and try and sit at this table and squeeze in. And clearly, you're the odd man out. So, it's how do you authentically enter? With smaller companies, it's a very different story. There are less resources. Your resources are more precious. You probably have a smaller team. You also probably have less information, less years in the business. Or even if you have a lot of years, maybe you've been doing things the same way for a long time and you're just at this weird plateau. And so you're like, where do we go from here? And then it's getting really creative. And I think with a smaller company, you can take more liberties, you can experiment more. When you have a huge brand, you have to really stick to the brand to stay authentic. Because if you try and do things the way the small kids are doing them, again, you're going to stick out like a sore thumb. So again, it always comes back to authenticity And so these younger companies, and when I say younger company, that could be a startup, that could be like a solopreneur venture with a couple contractors, whatever it looks like. But with them, when we meet together, it's like, okay, what's happening now? And what's happening for you? And that's where my executive coaching kind of comes in too. And I start to see all of the patterns between the way they're thinking, the way they're marketing, and the way they want to grow, and all the blocks in there. And that's really fun for me. I think that's like a sweet spot I like to operate in, because we can remove those personal blocks and see, oh, okay, they're actually not charging their prices because they have these money beliefs. So let's work on these money beliefs so that sales become easier. And then the way that you market yourself doesn't feel as desperado because you're more confident in what you're selling and you're at a more accurate price point what you're worth. So that's an example of that, type of work. And so very, very different worlds, but I like those different worlds because for me, it keeps things fresh and there are patterns between them. And I think, we talked about, not believing in yourself in certain areas as a leader. I've seen leaders who are VPs at huge companies who are so scared to get on stage and speak, or don't think they have a story to speak to, or don't think that they have an important message to share. I've met entrepreneurs who are brilliant, like truly geniuses, but they don't believe they can grow their company to the next level because they haven't yet, and they don't see that possibility. So I think the common denominator between them is sometimes they can't see that next chapter. And so that's where I come in, because I can clearly see it within the first few times that we meet. I'm like, oh, this is your path forward. Now let's figure out how to do it so it's as painless as possible and you can actually enjoy it.
Yes. And that a lot of people need that boost. It's like sometimes we don't really we see the vision, but we don't. But having someone like you come in and you just shift our mindsets and give us a whole vision of it, it's like, oh, like, okay, I could see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
And when I work with people, I look for that before we decide to work together. I'm like, are you hungry? Are you willing to stretch yourself? Because that's what it takes. You have to stretch a bit. You have to get a little uncomfortable, but then it's so worth it, because that moment of discomfort, you look back and you're like, oh, that's nothing now. Then all of a sudden you're grabbing the mic on stage, you're moderating panels, you're not thinking twice about it because you got over
Yeah.
that bit of resistance, that stretch. And that's the
Yeah.
coolest, most rewarding thing for me to see.
Girl, I know. I get there.
Yes,
Yes.
you will.
So your blueprint emphasizes like embodied power. Can you break down what this means and how it impacts women, entrepreneurs, and leadership and growth?
Yeah. So, how would you describe power? How would you define it?
Power can be many things. Um, my first mind will come to like power within.
Mhm.
The first thing, because it's like you won't have the power on the outside unless you deal with whatever's within first.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can do, the power stance where you stand out like I don't know, like you're gonna do jumping jacks, and you hold
Yeah.
it. Like, there are all these little tactics like that, or standing up tall and like kind of tricking our mind with our body. But that's kind of the reverse, right? We want it from the inside out so that we're not even thinking about how to hold ourselves or how to speak or how to project our voice. It's just coming from a naturally confident place. And so that's a big part of the work. And I think one of the most interesting things that feeds into marketing, like, again, I hate the word marketing in this context because we're talking about such deeper material. But when you have that confidence and you feel that power in your body and you've done the work to get there, all the other stuff becomes effortless. Then it's just making the right choices and seeing doors that you might not have seen before, but you walk right through them. I think the entrepreneurs that I work with who I believe have embodied power, it's like we'll talk about something and they'll be like, oh, wow, that's a good idea. I think that will solve this thing that's coming up. And then boom, within a week, they're already creating traction because they've taken action. And as an entrepreneur, taking action is a huge part of the job, right? We can think all day, we can dream all day. It's a fun place to be, to have our head in the clouds, but taking action is what really moves you forward.
It's true. You ain't lying about that. So I could say like many businesses and advisors, they focus solely on numbers. So, but incorporate the mindfulness and the authentic, being authentic. And why is it important for like how you do encouraging your clients and embody these values for them?
Could you repeat that a different way? Could you rephrase
I
it?
can. I can repeat it. How can I say it? Okay, so many businesses advisors focus solely on numbers, but you incorporate mindfulness and authentic leadership. And why is it important for why is it important for you to encourage your clients to embody these values, like as far as them not really focusing on the numbers and not really focusing on not being authentic, more of mindfulness and being authentic?
Gotcha. So I think there's a couple things. I think, yes, numbers do play a role. Absolutely. Numbers can tell us a lot. Numbers have a story, and that's very important. But as an entrepreneur, I find mindfulness to be an excellent tool for self mastery. And when you're an entrepreneur, you don't sign up for just any other job. You sign up for a job that employs your spirit and your heart and your mind. And you don't clock in and clock out. Like, you're in it. You are it. And there's a lot of ties between you and the brand you create. And so the more you know yourself and the more you can lean on tools like mindfulness, then the easier it is for you and for everyone around you. So I love mindfulness. And again, it doesn't necessarily need to be silent meditation, but it can be going out for a walk or taking a moment to just note textures and colors and shapes around you. But I really believe that, outside of all of this, outside of business and work and everything, it's like we're human beings. And so when you can take a moment to focus on the being part, sometimes it can bring a ton of clarity to everywhere else.
Mm, that's true. So you work with major brands such as PayPal, Absolute Vodka, and LinkedIn. What are some of the universal marketing principles that apply to both established brands and smaller startups?
Mm. Consistency, show up often. That's the only way you're going to find success. Hate to break it to you, but popping in on one channel for 6 months and then switching gears and then switching gears again, it's not going to go anywhere. Marketing is a long game. Two is get artistic with it. And when I say artistic, it doesn't need to be some highbrow Renaissance painting looking thing. I mean, get creative with whatever you're producing. Get creative with your product or service. Get creative with your copy. And by getting creative, I mean, again, making sure it's your authentic voice, your authentic look and feel, whatever identity you've crafted, but really bring the craft to it. And I think it's a really, really fun, beautiful part of business that a lot of entrepreneurs just speed through, and they just pick out some templates, some color palette they Googled, and call it a day. But that's not how you stand out. If you want to stand out, you have to really refine those things, and they can evolve over time. I mean, these big companies, small companies, they all evolve their brands slowly. Every year you can expect maybe one color to disappear from a big brand. So yeah, consistency, really bringing the art into your business. And the other big thing is that there is also a science to business too, right?
Yeah.
Numbers are important. Look at the data, look at, test and learn consistently. These big brands might look like they have it all figured out, but they're learning too. And they consistently test different strategies and test different tactics take the learnings from those and then change how they approach things over time. And so the more entrepreneurs that can do that and not just have it be a guessing game, I think they'll go farther, faster, and more efficient.
I believe that too. So, with
Yeah.
your experience, what are some of the common marketing mistakes you see and entrepreneurs make?
There are so many. Oh my God. Where do I start? I think on the daily, I see something that I'm like, girl, what are you doing?
Oh my god. What's some
I think
examples?
I think the first thing that I notice is copywriting. So if you're putting something out that looks and sounds like something else I've seen 100 times today, I'm not going to see it. I'm going to totally just scroll on by. Um, if I see a billboard that looks like 1,000 other billboards I've seen, I'm not going to pay attention. I have 2 seconds to view that thing on the highway, right?
Right.
So again, get creative, like lean into that writer muscle or find people who have that muscle and bring them in. So that's the first thing. I think again, because I'm a stories words person, so that's something I pay attention to. Um, Two, I think it's really owning your brand. And I see a lot of brands that are just copycats of each other. And every time I'm like, no, you're cooler than this. You're more unique. I know you are. So let's bring that into here. It's like there's so much opportunity to bring your whole self into your brand, but usually people are really scared. So that's a mistake I see and just a hurdle to jump over. It's not necessarily, an exit sign. And then the third is delegation. I see it when entrepreneurs are trying to do everything themselves and they're burning themselves out and they're exhausted.
Yeah.
And I've been there, so I totally get it. But you can also get creative with ways to bring in people to your business or find trades at first, until you start generating capital or revenue, just, a little bit of profit. And then I think people would be surprised at how many people there are in the world that could help their business and save them a lot of time and open up their capacity to do the things that push their business forward. And that was one of the first things that a business coach told me, which was as an entrepreneur or CEO, your job is to dedicate 80% of your time towards things that actually move your business forward, that actually bring in revenue, 20% for everything else. And I find that most small business leaders have that backwards. And you can tell from the outside because, you can tell they're burning out with captions or that they put through something together on Canva and a designer's not behind it. And I don't know. I believe that small businesses can look like deep, rich, beautiful brands and look like these top tier brands. They just need to get the right people in place and think about it the right way.
Yes. And it's crazy that you say that because like for the like marketing that I do, I use 3 different graphic designers.
Yeah.
So sometimes people be like, "Wait a minute, this is really nice, but wow, this is really nice." I've always done that. I always use 3 different people, and then to like edit my videos and stuff, I use 2 different people for that.
Yeah.
And I just like it's really good to like always have like something different and creative from other people of their mindset on how they do things. And I always recommend that to a lot of people. Don't just have one person doing something. It's just about just bringing out more of your creativity because each person sees me different, but they see me the same at the same time.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. They help you your brand and your content and everything that you do, which there's a lot, in different ways, which is really cool.
Yeah.
I have a designer, and when I started working with her, it was like, this was needed. My Canvas skills are very low. And what's cool about that is the partnership. She thinks of awesome ideas, or I'm like, hey, I have an idea for this thing, or this is what I'm envisioning. And then she nails it. And it's like the coolest feeling in the world.
Yes, it is. So what are some unconventional marketing tactics that can help small business owners stand out?
I think one that's not talked about a lot is the beauty of partnerships, collabs. And it's huge. It's how I grew my energy healing business. And I'll use that as an example. I moved from Denver to San Diego. And obviously, if you do have a service-based business, that means you need to get a new clientele because all your clients are bye-bye. So I moved to San Diego and I was like, okay, I thought about my market. I enjoy, at the time, energy healing with people who really get it and who are curious. And people who seek out Reiki energy healing are also probably taking yoga classes and going to meditation classes and dabbling in other healing modalities. So to establish myself, I was like, I'm going to do events with other healers and combine Reiki and these other practices in ways that I haven't seen before. And it worked. It was a hit. Immediately, I started a client base and I started doing these classes at a nearby art gallery because it was a unique space, not just another yoga studio. And San Diego, which is where I'm based, there's yoga studios on every corner.
Wow.
Like it's basically Starbucks. It's insane. So but again, it's oversaturated. So how do you stand out? Well, you do a class in an art gallery and you combine Reiki and breath work, or Reiki and a vocal workshop, or Reiki and an art class, right? It's like these really cool, interesting things. And again, I did that because I was interested in that. And sometimes your ideal client is a lot like you. So if you can do things you enjoy, suddenly you open up this channel. And because of that, people were drawn to the classes. And then I started to have I had luxury hotel spa managers come to these classes. And they were like, we want you to do a class with our spa members. And that was at the point where then it scaled. I basically 10x'd my price as an energy healer. And then I got to the point where I was like, I actually don't want to do energy healing all the time. This was just supposed to be a side hustle. And now it's gotten to a point where it's not. So I changed the model, and basically, long story short, the unconventional take is do partnerships, find collabs. You can do a collab with a giant corporate company, but you can also do collabs with people that are around your same level and size. Or you can come together and do a community event and have 5 or 6 different people. And it's kind of a cool, like, day block party situation. I love local in-person events. I think people really gravitate towards that. And they're really proud when they're like, yeah, this brand is from this town, or this business owner is from here. They're proud of that. There's a couple in my local town here who created some sort of like non-alcoholic substitute drink. And I'm really proud of that. I'm like, oh yeah, Hum was created here by a couple. And like, I like talking about them. So partnerships, local stuff, and in-person events. And there's a ton of opportunity there for all sorts of businesses.
Wow. So can you share a story time on when life was lifing, and how did you manage both personal and professional priorities?
I got married this year,
Ooh.
and it was like amazing, but also a shit show in terms of wedding planning. Like, wedding planning takes over your life. And I know people always said that, but I didn't realize it till I was in it. It's like, oh my God, if I have to look at another floral design thing, I'm going to stab my eyeballs out.
Oh my God.
And so, my business was also doing really well at the time. Around the time I got engaged, I was also it kind of like dropped from the sky, but it was this really cool opportunity to design and facilitate a leadership offsite in Zurich with this startup team of about 12 people for 5 days. And I don't know if you've ever been to an offsite, but a 5-day offsite is a lot of time.
It is.
It was very intense. So
Mm.
getting engaged, quickly designing and facilitating that offsite. And then that led to a huge boom in my business. So then balancing the momentum of my business with throwing a wedding. And then also a third thing on top is that I was preparing for our honeymoon. And my husband and I are both entrepreneurs. We were like, we're taking like a month off. Like we're taking a long honeymoon. We're going across the world. We're doing a trip that we won't be able to do with kids whenever that comes for us. And we went to Bali. But when you prep for something like that, it's also a lot of work. And so I had this momentum. I was planning my wedding, and then I was prepping for everything to continue while I was totally out of the picture so I could take a month off. And that was kind of a lot. And, it took a ton of prioritization. A lot of things go out the window that don't matter. I stopped posting on Insta for a little while. And, again, I delegated the pieces that did go out. I hit pause on the podcast, so I didn't launch it until after I came back because I was just like, there's no way in hell I can do something new on top of this. I need to be real. And I'm actually going through all those lessons again because we are moving and I have a family member who is in the process of dying and passing away. And so
Sorry.
like family calls, it's part of life. It's universal, but it brings a lot with it, brings emotion. It requires time. And, that plus moving, but again, another, I launched my podcast. And again, here's another wave of momentum along with these two other big life things. And it doesn't matter if those life things are positive or negative, they're going to absorb a lot of energy. And so I think the big lessons are not just prioritization and being ruthless with that, but you have to carve out time for yourself when stuff is going on to just feel whatever it is, anger, sadness, joy, nothing, and be okay with that. And I think a third piece too is having resources, having people you can talk to, having, maybe it's a friend that you say, hey, I'm going through a lot of stuff right now. Do you mind if I just open up about stuff or like call you in a week or call you when I get a random breakdown moment and want to burn everything to the ground? It's just resourcing is really important and finding those for you.
Yeah, it definitely is. Sorry about your family member. I'll keep them in my prayers.
Thank you.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, please tell us about Side Note, the podcast.
Side note's my little baby. It's I started it in September. It's really just the most authentic conversations with the most authentic leaders that I can find. And most of those are women, not all of them. Some of them have written books and done really cool things. I recently interviewed Dr. Adrienne Uzim. She's all about hunger and, how hunger is a signal for what we're not getting in our life, which is really interesting. And so it's finding people like this that have just like really interesting takes. Another woman I recently interviewed, she is a career coach. She is a corporate girly, so she does both. She's also a contestant for a pageant in Colorado, and she's writing a book. So I was like, how on earth do you do all this? And so we talked about that. And
balance.
So it's just all sorts of interesting conversations that I think are, relevant and important to talk about because there's all these big ideas flying around. And when we can make them personal and interesting, suddenly they land for us and they can inspire us with ideas or maybe just motivate us to tackle something a little differently or just motivate us point blank.
Yes. So how can people listen?
Oh, well, you can go to sidenotepod.com and you can find us on YouTube at Side Note Pod or on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And then you can find me on Insta at growwith_Sam or growwithsam.com.
Nice. I will be listening.
Yes. Well, you're going to be on.
Yes. So please tell us about the different services that you have because I know you do private one-on-one coaching, but you do offer other things for you to help people with their business as far as business coaching and marketing advisor.
Yeah. So I have a couple different ways to work with me. So I have a mastermind called The Greenhouse, and that's for women entrepreneurs who kind of are looking for that steady beat of support. And again, getting in the right room, connecting with other women who are in the same place, because that's really powerful. So that's the most recent launch. I work with people one-on-one, kind of as a fractional CMO. So we have a coaching call, but typically, we may not be talking about your mindset. We may be talking about how marketing is going or strategizing on how to grow it. And then Slack support is always included. So that's a big part of it too, because I know being an entrepreneur is busy. And sometimes you just have one question. You don't need to meet with a coach every other week. So that's what one-on-one stuff looks like as a fractional CMO and executive coach. And then soon, which I have not talked about this publicly at all yet, like no marketing channels have heard this. So your audience is getting it first. But I will be offering a lower ticket Slack only support. And that's for up to 30 people. No live calls, but I mean, it's still coaching. I'm sending audio notes, like I'm coaching you asynchronously, because I think that's just a better fit for some people that either don't have time or can't afford or don't need the in-depth, 1 hour calls here and there. So that will be starting January 1st.
Nice. Yeah. I like that. Work, Sam.
Thanks.
It's needed though, because you do so much, you know what I'm saying? So it's just super dope. But one thing I do want you to go into a little bit more detail is the greenhouse, because I know that you have in-person retreats in, was it California, Arizona, and is it Colorado?
Colorado. I'm also thinking about Washington, kind of the West Coast, but I don't know. If I get some girls who are in New York or something, then I'd be down for an East Coast one too. It's kind of where people are at. But yeah, the greenhouse is like, it's like where my soul lives. And it's the container that I always wanted. And, I've been in masterminds that are business focused and like talking about your goals and keeping you accountable. And then I've been in masterminds that are all about like your identity and stepping into visibility and, looking at the fears that are coming up and, getting unstuck. And I wanted both. And so the greenhouse is a group of 10 women, and we meet biweekly, and those calls will have a little training at the beginning, which is typically a pattern I'm seeing across people. So it's a training that almost everyone gets something out of. And then hot seat style coaching. And so again, that's where you're bringing up a question that we can go in depth with live. And because that group, they're all around the same level, they all end up asking questions that are really relevant to the other women. And some are like a step ahead or a step behind. And so sometimes someone might be asking a question that you're going to have in like a month or 6 months. So that's a really cool, magical piece of it. Another piece is that I bring in guest experts. So I'm actually bringing in, one of my mentors who's on the board of Coca-Cola. I'm bringing in a woman who's just a total like badass with operations and partnerships. I'm bringing in someone to do a training on marketing funnels and setting those up and what those look like per person. And with all these people, you get Q&A access for that day. So you can actually ask the deeper questions. So there will be one monthly guest expert training. And so there will be 12 total for the year. And then there will be Slack community support so that, at any time, if you're like having like, oh, I want to burn everything to the ground moment, you have this back pocket of women who really get you and you can be vulnerable with and say whatever's coming up. Or on the opposite end, be really proud of yourself, because this is really hard work, and we deserve a space where we can just go off and be like, yeah, I want to talk about my business baby for a bit.
Yeah, that is amazing. I applaud you for even having this type of space, and just even for you to actually step out on faith to actually just be like, look, I'm getting ready to create this space and I'm about to just go for it. Because sometimes creating something like this, it takes a lot of work.
Oh yeah, it's required a lot of energy. And that's, again, it goes back to that thing I was saying earlier, like life is lifing right now, and I have this. But I mean, I've said no to a lot of other projects to prioritize this, because I think it's important to find different spaces that you find belonging in, where you can be vulnerable and yourself and share what's coming up. in your business and life, because again, everything's connected as an entrepreneur. So I'm super excited for this.
I'm excited for you.
Thank you.
Like, seriously. So, can you let people know how to contact you and how to even like utilize the services that you provide? Just all the good stuff that you have.
All the good stuff. You can find me at growwithsam.com, and everything's there. Stuff about the greenhouse, stuff about working one-on-one as a client. I also offer something called deep dives. So those are just one-time coaching sessions, and then you get some Slack support after for 2 weeks. And those are great if you have something acute, like you have a launch coming up you want to chat through or whatever it might be. And it's also a great way to test how we work together, because I am pretty selective about one-on-one clients and fractional CMO work. And then if you're interested in Side Note the podcast, go to sidenotepod.com, and there's a little box there that you can share stuff with, whether you want to be a guest or a sponsor or whatever it might be.
Yes. Bring it on, girl. So thank you so much, Sam. I really appreciate you for being on my podcast. I appreciate everyone for listening. And Sam just dropped some gems for y'all. And if you don't utilize her services, just make sure you plan on doing it, because you just want to get your life all the way together.
Oh, thank you, Yvette. I'm so grateful you had me on, and it was so much fun to chat with you.
Yes, so much fun. So, guys, make sure you tune in to Life Her Podcast, subscribe, and listen to all audio major platforms, and we will get with you soon.
Welcome to Life Her Podcast, the podcast that guides you from the 9-to-5 grind to the freedom of your own path. Discover how to conquer life's challenges while pursuing your passions with unwavering faith. Because being an entrepreneur is not easy. So let's get to it.